Lucas, thanks for making time today to join the show. I'm super excited to have you on to talk about AI innovation and fleet management solutions. So, can you tell me what inspired you to found Tourmo back in 2014?
Yeah, Tourmo is really brainchild of there's so much data out there and people need to make sense out of their data. And while putting hardware into vehicles was a solved problem, it was really everybody was collecting more and more data. Often different solutions were deployed into the field. And how can we make sense out of the data, centralize everything, make sense out of it, and then automate the process that ultimately helps fleets to get stronger?
And your background, I see you were at Qualcomm and you were even at Park in AI research. How did you first identify this opportunity?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So we were at Qualcomm focusing a lot of what a mobile device and what you can do with data contextualization, understanding where people are walking, what that they are up to in their day. And I was always very interested in transportation. And I thought that there should be more we could do with data other than knowing where the vehicle is and where it resides. And so that then really sparked sort of the interest in driving behavior was the first one, but then really taking the fuel and getting a holistic view of what the vehicle is up to and what the person in the field is up to, because not only vehicle, but medical sales reps and everyone who is moving around can really benefit from having better understanding of what their context is, what are their goals, and what are they ultimately up to.
Exactly. And I'm curious, like, what are the common outcomes when a company gets this kind of fleet management data? What are they able to do with it that they wouldn't have been able to do before?
It is a very interesting topic. And so what I'm always talking about is that it's very empowering. So it's empowering to the driver. There's at first a little bit of a reservation of like Big Brother's now watching you and so
Hmm.
on and so, but it is very empowering because it helps you to understand what are maybe some of the goals that are set that are not achievable. Oh, I want you to go from here to here in LA traffic in the afternoon. Well,
Yeah. You're not
how?
going anywhere.
Yeah. Then the next piece is that there's a constant pressure, obviously, on drivers to perform faster, to get there on time, and so on and so forth. But driving behavior, fuel efficiency, as well as safety overall, is really an important piece. So it's very empowering to them and to the organization to really understand how they can optimize certain parts of their fleet without really dealing with and treating that constantly as a secondary.
This is reminding me of how when you want to optimize for a system, you can't just take one particular individual process and optimize for just that process because it's going to have all these knock-on negative effects that you might not have seen. So I don't know why this is reminding me of a very long time ago. Domino's Pizza did this. We delivered in 30 minutes or less, right? Or it's free. It was a very early marketing thing. And obviously they are only optimizing for speed, not safety, fuel efficiency, all these other elements that you're talking about.
Yeah. And one of the big learnings that we see when our customers adopt our solution is that they're instantly getting a better understanding of their entire fleet, where they maybe have weak points, how they can better optimize their coaching, because ultimately everybody is doing some form of coaching one way or the other. But where best focus my time and resources that I have to do coaching? On what part of my fleet do I do that to get the best outcomes?
Can you give a concrete example of what that might be?
So there's, for instance, we work with a very large auto parts delivery company, and they have 30,000 drivers, and their age ranges quite a bit. So there is this notion of, oh, if somebody is potentially 45 years old, they're probably more safer than someone who is 21 years old. When you look across all their data, that's actually not true. What is true is how long their tenure is. So if
Oh,
somebody
yes. Yeah.
45 just started a month ago, they're still figuring things out. They're trying to understand how the order form works, if they took the right pieces with them, and so on and so forth. So if they, for instance, deliver brake pads, then figuring everything out. In a 21-year-old, they sometimes get a bad rep, but basically they're doing a fantastic job, in particular if they have, for instance, already done it for 6 to 12 months.
Mhm.
And it's, for instance, what showed in the data is the tenure is much more telling than their actual age. And there's similar things like, for instance, when people are late, what we also found in the data is that the distance they have to travel is actually inverse to their likelihood of being late. And so the best example is if they have
So if
to
they're very close, doesn't mean they're very close, it's likely to be late.
exactly, if they just have to bring the brake pads across the street, then everybody is like, oh, I have to be there at 2. Let's start at 2 because it's really
Yes.
just across the street.
Yeah.
And so those were things, once you have a better handle on your data, all in a sudden, those are things that you can improve without really dinging anyone or without bringing any kind of negativity into your
Mhm.
operation. And really understanding, hey, if we have to deliver something on time at 2 and it's just across the road, how about we start 10 minutes early the journey versus starting a minute early and be late?
This reminds me of, I guess it's common anytime there's like a tool that gives you a new type of analysis or new expertise, the really best ones can help you ask better questions. You like, I'm sure companies might not have even thought of that particular angle. And those are the kinds of things I imagine you guys can bring to the table, especially with solutions consulting when you're diving into a company's issues. I'd love to hear the story of like, how did you start landing your first major enterprise clients?
Yeah. And the first major enterprise client that we got, that was a large cement company. And so one piece they were interested in, they're working with a lot of third parties, meaning they used to own 200,000 of their own cement trucks worldwide. And for instance, in France, where they're headquartered, they're not owning any of the cement trucks anymore. So they moved everything to third party. The struggle they looked at is that every third party has a different hardware manufacturer. And we offered at the time, as we still do, also a phone based recording mechanism that you just take your phone, similar as we all know from Uber, and it records where you are and it records very fine granular also the driving behavior. So somebody in their organization put one and one together and we're saying, if we can do it phone based as well, then that would be really appealing. And we started a pilot with them. And it became very quickly clear to us that's obviously a huge opportunity. So golden rule is really to serve your early customers, overserve them, be there for them, answer all the questions, be truthful to them and be honest to them. It's better to break some bad news and tell them how to recover from it than pretending it never happened and they find out. And so what we did during the first pilot is basically we had 40 people in the pilot and we had them served and monitored day and night. We were sitting there really understanding how they move around, what are the patterns, what are the behaviors, and so on and so forth. We had something going wrong where a couple of devices never recorded anything. And so we came back to them and we're saying, hey, we have a blind side here, but we have a patch out, we release it. And so it's really this part of make sure that you serve your first customers to the extent you can and really show off, but be honest and truthful to them
Yeah.
and listen to them, understand what is the problem you're trying to solve for them.
I'm smiling because this is a very common pattern for really successful B2B SaaS companies that you really want to nail the delivery for your first customers and get positive word of mouth and really build up your reputation. And it's like this is no exception. How are you guys right now driving awareness for the product and finding new businesses that would benefit?
50% of our growth is coming from recommendations of existing customers. So operations managers, we're serving customers that have at least 1,000 vehicles or more. That's our sweet spot. And so operations managers that have deployed our solution in one company, if they transition into a new company, that's typically where we then have a person in there that already knows us. The other part is that we asked actively if they can be reference points such that we can go out and find a similar company and say, hey, there's multiple auto parts delivery companies. Here, we're very successful with this one. And then go and see if we can find another one that does likewise work. And so a big part of our growth is, yes, we do outreach and yes, we do cold calls and through LinkedIn and everything else. But really where we get the most traction and success is when we have people that like our solution, that understand what the value is they're getting and that basically speak our words for us. it's a lot more credible.
Makes sense. There's nothing stronger than getting customers from referrals. And no matter what marketing you do, like top of funnel, it's just not the same as it coming from a trusted source. Makes a lot of sense. I see sustainability is mentioned on your site as one of the goals. Can you share how Tourmo is like helping fleet operators achieve sustainability goals?
Yeah, so more and more regulations are out there that you have to do CO2 reporting, similar as you have to do your financial reporting. And getting insights into what makes a fleet sustainable. Obviously, there is all the parts of what kind of vehicles are you using, what kind of fuel you're using, and can you maybe turn your fleet electric and so on and so forth. But a part that you have direct control over is the driving behavior. In driving safe, in driving fuel efficient, they do have certain correlation, but they're not necessarily the same. So we have the ability to then monitor drivers from a fuel efficient and then better help them to understand how they can expose certain behaviors that are just making the overall fleet more fuel efficient.
No accelerating. This is the first thing that comes to
Also,
mind.
accelerating
Soft foot.
and no, it's almost more important, no unnecessary braking.
Oh,
Because that's
yes.
where if you don't have the regenerative power like you have in an EV, that's where you
Mhm.
put it directly into the ground. So
Yeah.
ease off the accelerator earlier, roll to the next traffic light, and then you don't keep your following distance so you can buffer it out, even so it's sometimes difficult if you're in somewhat of a rush hour environment and everybody pulls in front of you. Parts you can do, monitor your idle time.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I'm just smiling because I was imagining like there's certain things that would, negatively impact safety, like drafting. I guess drafting is not going to be recommended. When you look at the intersection of AI and this kind of data analysis and making smart fleet decisions, where do you see it headed in the next like 3 to 5 years? Everybody is trying to predict the future with this. What's your take?
I believe people are becoming much more worse in data, which is really important. And then understanding how organizations can deal with data overload. And so we're having so much data that in every industry we're collecting. And how do you smartly aggregate all that data together that you can turn a large amount of data into actual actionable insights? Things that you want to address, things that you can take action on. If you, for instance, manage 30 people in the field, you couldn't attend every single speed event, every single heartbreaking event, and so on and so forth. It will really tell you what are the parts that you should take action on, and translating that into actionable insights, I believe what is something that the better companies are able to do that, the more they can really take advantage of their data.
So really choosing what elements really deserve human attention is what I'm hearing. There's so much data, but not all of it matters, and maybe not all of it matters in certain contexts. So it's like making sure that the people that are there are only paying attention to the most critical elements. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And then offload the rest to the machine. So for
Yeah.
instance, if I'm a manager of 30 people, then it's much better if the people interact with the machine or with the system, I should say, and then being advised by the system, hey, you should focus on this, you should focus on this, and you should focus on it. And I, as a manager, should really only attend to things that need to be escalated to me. Like I don't have to be in the loop if people are responding, for instance, to alerts the right way. So we can aggregate it for them, maybe have a week out. If they're improving on these dimensions that's recommended to them to improve on, then I don't have to be in the loop. And people are much more positive about it because the system ultimately will want to empower them to get stronger. Whereas if a manager talks to them about it, it becomes very quickly a tricky situation. Is a good driver. Like if you can ask people, 94% of all people are good drivers. And so if you as a manager go down there and say, hey, you should probably consider this and that, then it becomes always somewhat of a standoff. Whereas if the system highlights and
Mhm.
also you to showcase that to your manager, that you'll like, look, I have a pretty good driving performance and so on and so forth. Here I was dispatched something that I wasn't able to make in time, and the system supports that decision. So I shouldn't be dinged for being late to that delivery because it's Friday afternoon in LA. and there's just no way out to get.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about, because whenever you have a product like yours that's really taking a very complex, like multidimensional problem and providing information, the other side of it is somehow change management. If you just install software and no one changes their behavior, the benefits aren't the same, and I'm curious, how do you help like, what do you do for companies so that they're actually able to change the way they're doing things based on the insights that you're providing? Can you talk a little bit about that part of it?
Yeah. And so we just spent about 1 year, not a month, not any like 2, 3 months. We spent about 1 year to really work with this large auto parts delivery company and their 30,000 people to truly understand how they can adopt our system stronger and make it easy on them. Understanding that their number one goal is to not geek out on our solution
Yeah.
is very difficult. It's easy to say, but it's very difficult to understand. And so what's important there is to really truly understand what are the things they have to do to get their job done and not give them any bit of more information, to make it as intuitive as possible, that people can look at this and feel like, yep, if I go in there, it's not a burden for me. And sometimes as simple as get rid of a certain number that doesn't present on that screen value to them. Don't overload them. And we see that with, for instance, people really loved Google in the beginning, and not saying that they don't anymore, but there was just one text box
Yeah.
and you put,
Yes, yes. I know exactly
and
what you mean. Yeah.
every competitor had weather in stock and news
Yes.
and this, and very cluttered. And so the declutterization of your tool helps change management a lot, because people, the more intuitive they feel they can use the part, the easier it is. And another piece we're doing is what we call autopilot, is that anything you do, fuel efficient, safety, or operational aspects of delivering in time and see if you're on time, it all comes down to two things: your performance score and your engagement. And you can really abstract the way how you think about every problem to that. Oh, here's the dimensions that matter, and how am I performing in that? And then I have an engagement score, meaning if a ticket is deployed to me that I have to do something, am I doing that? Am I engaging in time? Am I getting my stuff done? What's the two? And those are the two fundamentals that we basically drive very hard. There's one is the performance and one is the engagement. And if you just look at the two, then all of a sudden adding more functionality doesn't matter, because it's always comes down to that performance engagement.
I can tell that you really have a deep understanding from your customer's point of view, because I've spoken to lots of different CTOs, and I know you must know this thing that can happen where you're the expert in the whole solution space and you get really excited about, but they could do this and that and all these other things. But like you said, the customer just needs to know, are we hitting the performance, and does the person like respond and is like on the job? So I love that you're looking for a simplified approach and not falling in love with the solution. This has been incredibly insightful, Lucas. And before we wrap up, I'm curious, what's your vision for growth for Tourmo in the future? What are you excited about?
So we're excited. We're now rolling out Copilot. A lot of people have a Copilot in one version and another. And so that's something where you can interact much more naturally with all your data as we're
Mhm.
streaming more different solutions in. And so you have your analyst at your fingertips, and then a lot of the automation of auto AI. And so it comes down to generating insights, which we do through population-based learning, generating insights that people otherwise wouldn't have looked for. A good example is, let's say you're trying to understand, am I late to a delivery or not? And so you can put as many dimensions as you want into that and say which vehicle we use to deliver, which product we use so we deliver, which driver is going, what their tenure is, who their manager is, and put as many data points in there as possible and have the system automatically do a heuristic search in that solution space to understand which combinations of features are actually telling. And a
Mhm.
good example of that we deployed was that we have a fuel delivery company, and they're delivering fuel to gas stations. And so one of the issues they had, they're located in Brazil. One of the issues they had that we found in the data, that on a Wednesday afternoon, they have certain delays. Then the guy was saying, okay, makes total sense. That's when the soccer game is on. Also found is that they use a specific trailer to a certain subset of gas stations. They always have delays there. And so that didn't mean much to us, but showing that to the domain expert, they all of a sudden were saying, yeah, that makes sense. Those are the old trailers, and you have to clear out the smaller gas stations completely to be able to deliver product. And so they found insight, they turned it into a policy. Don't use these trailers anymore with these type of gas stations. And those are parts where they didn't look for it
Yeah.
in the data, but the data itself has that structure in it. And if we can expose that structure, that helps them a lot. So I'm really interested and excited about what we can bring to the table with really exposing structure that's in the data for our customers so they don't have to search for their own answers.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Lukas.